Hey, this is my final sprint. I'm going to try to run through this quickly because my first half was 30 minutes already. So I'm going to show my demo scene super quick. I can move around, I can shoot bullets based on the position. I can change the scene, which I accidentally just showed there. So shoot bullets, change the position of the turret and shoot. I can destroy ships with that, showing off the collision. If I run into a ship, or it runs into me 3 times, so there's one. You can see I'm losing health here down at the sprites in the UI, and the alarm time is here. So I was hit by a bullet and a ship, I lost 2 lives, and I reset the scene. That's working pretty much, nothing too crazy. Close this out. My main just calls around on my engine. My actual engine has things in order, so first I initialize, meaning I set the width and height of the screen, the name, and the clear color. My load content loads resources, and then sets my visualizer sphere. Update calls updatables and processes the time. Draw draws my drawables. Unload content terminates all my managers, and terminates the visualizer. Run just calls run, and then I have these return functions for the user to get the width, height, and time in seconds. This is not accessible by the user. They get it through time manager instead, but the time manager still needs this to get the time. So I'll show this documentation for my engine. This is the main page as you saw previously. Actually, this is the main page. Showing how to load resources, how to initialize, some other stuff with the scene that I'll come back to. My class list, here's my engine. Description for my engine stuff, this is the call diagrams. But get width, again, just I have returns the width of the window, returns the time lapse in seconds, returns height. That's the documentation for that. You can look through it after. Let's see what's next. So that's the main engine loop. The load resources, this is where the user loads in the stuff. So I have load texture, load model, create image, along with loading the default stuff. Starting a scene, I just set the start scene with first scene, set the current scene, and then initialize it. And then the user would have to do that with whatever scene they want. Creating images, very similar to loading in all my other assets. Game initialize sets the width and height of the window, the clear color, and the window name. That should work if I just change the name, just to show that it's actually called. So now the window, yeah, the change is reflected. And then again, that's called in that order with initialize, load content, and then I just call the main game loop. So for these asset managers, they're under resource managers here. They're all set up basically the exact same way. So I can, for image manager, I can get and load an image with a key, a texture, and the rectangle. For get image, all I need is the key. I can create an image, which is what I do in load resources. So to load an image, I pass in the key, a texture, and the rectangle. I put it into the map. When I want to get one, I just return the instance to image list with the key. And then when I unload, I go through the entire map, delete the pointer for the image, set it to null, and then I go through, images unloaded. Exact same thing for my model manager. I can load with a file or with a model, pre-made model. I can get a model with a key. Works the exact same way. Shader manager also, except I have default shaders here with the enum. And then some asserts, like with the other stuff, to make sure that the user isn't doing anything stupid. Unloading works the same way. Delete the pointer, set it to null, increase the iterator, and then it'll say shaders unloaded. So if I run this here and then close out, actually first I'll switch the scene to show that the stuff between scene changes also gets called. So this is my updatable manager, so this is scene level stuff. So the resources do not get deleted, since of course I still need them. When I actually close out the game, that's when I actually call terminate on my resource stuff. So shaders, models, textures, and images unloaded, along with the visualizer. So you can see it goes from like small user level stuff to like the big engine stuff. For the asset managers in my documentation, show like shader manager. Descriptions of stuff, so what it does, parameters, what the parameter is along with the name, what the return type is. And I believe here I have the enum for the default shaders, so that the user knows what they're called and how to use them. The way these are used, if I go to my, let's do enemy. When I create a graphics object, I can get the shader, model, and texture. So here's light render, default shader. Passing in the model and the texture that I loaded in. And again, those are in load resources. And I already showed that these were terminated and how they were terminated, so I'll move on to the time manager. Time manager is simple. It's what you had already given us for the freeze time code. Here's some commenting, but I can get the time in seconds, process time, and the frame time. The time returned is the current time minus the previous time based on the amount of time frozen. For freeze time, this is the code that you gave us, so you're familiar with it. But I just gather up all the time that was frozen, and then I just add it to, or process that, and then return the time minus the active time. So I can run this and show the freeze frame. So I'll shoot some bullets, freeze it, I'll wait a bit, and then you can see that the alarms work with them, so they disappeared at that spot. I can also step through, and then when I come back, it'll work the same way. So freeze frame is working fine. It doesn't mess up my systems. I can pause and unpause, and then the alarms are still good. And then, again, you're familiar with this code. So the documentation, I believe I have. Not too important, but my time manager is also here, along with the descriptions of what these things do and the parameters, since the user might want to know what or how to actually use it. Should show where it's actually called, like say in my alarmable manager, I call time manager get frame time. This is actually the real time, so this would be in seconds. And then that's how that's what I base my alarms on. And you saw at the bottom during my output, the time was actually reflected in seconds of when the alarm was gonna trigger. For scene management, go to scene manager. My scene manager has all my elbow managers, or sorry, that's for a scene. My scene manager just has my current and next scene. I can initialize the scene, set the current scene, and set the next scene as well as terminate the current scene. I have access to my cameras. So when I initialize the scene, I just call it initialize. When I set it, I just set the actual pointer. I can get the current scene by returning it, terminate it by calling terminate and then deleting it. Then it says scene manager terminated. Process the updatables. If there's no next scene, then I just call update on the current scene. Otherwise, if there is, I call change scene. What change scene does is terminates the current scene, deletes it, sets the current scene to the next scene, and then calls initialize again. Drawables just calls draw on the current scene, and then returning the cameras happens here. So you saw that I could switch scenes. So run the demo. If I press R, switch to the scene, and then that's happening here through the tank. So when I release the R key, I set next scene, and then it swaps the scene, and then you saw that appropriate destructors were called. For my actual scene, this is where I have all my managers that can get processed every frame, along with the camera manager. Initialize is overridden by the user, and so is terminate. So current scene. The constructor, I set up my managers, the camera manager, and set the default camera. Destructor deletes them all, calls terminate on the camera manager, deletes it, and says scene destroyed. Update in this order, I process my commands, alarms, updates, inputs, and collision. Submitting a command, of course, just takes the command and submits it to the broker, which then gets processed here. My draw draws all my elements. I can register updatables. So this is where submitting for registration and registering is actually different. So submitting eventually submits the command, and then when that gets executed, it actually registers to the scene, which registers it to the appropriate manager. So basic stuff. This is already working fine. The only thing different is for alarmables, at least, I can add time and get the remaining time, which I already showed, but I can come back to once I get back to alarms. And yes, self-explanatory stuff. This is overridden by the user, and then when I terminate, I delete those managers. For a user demo scene, initialize is where I create all my stuff, so this is overridden. I set my collision pairs and self. Terminate is where I delete the stuff that should be deleted, like the pointers. And that's how this scene is working. So I can show this in my documentation. Huge call diagram, descriptions for my functions, what they do with parameters, return types, and examples. So what goes under initialize, the user might want to know how it should look right here. When I actually cut this video now, and then I'll come back and talk about my Hubble systems. So hang tight.